Welcome. It's nice to see you like that. My name is Patty Gillespie, and I am speaking on courthouse records. For those of you who haven't actually been to courthouses or have incorporated courthouse documents in your research, this will be a lot of fun for you. For those of you that have, we may have some fun just talking about different ways that we can access courthouse records now. So let's go ahead and have some fun. This slide is to assure you that no matter what I say, that FamilySearch is not at fault. So if I say something crazy, it's all on me. So let's go and have a good time. All right, today what we hope to do in the next 20 minutes is to show an example of researching with these courthouse documents to tell a story. We're going to list various courthouse documents. We're going to define and discuss what is an offline and online courthouse, and we're going to prepare for searching particular courthouse locations. We want to be sure we're searching in the right location for the family that we are researching. So let's see what we come up with. Here's the example. Our first number one is the example of using courthouse documents. This is Mabel Claire Powers, and we are going to research her best kept secrets. Here is her certificate of death. Her real name was Patricia Marie. Her last name was Powers when she was born. You can see right away that her name is actually not Patricia. That is one of the fun mysteries we get to research. But let's take a look right here. This is the date of birth that we were given on her death certificate. Now, obviously, she had passed, so she wasn't giving the information. Her daughter, however, was given the information, and we are fairly certain that this is, in fact, her exact day, month, and year of birth. All right, so we're going to start over here, a timeline on the right-hand side. We're going to look at the year that she is that has been cited and translate that to a traditional age that the year will be, and stated, which will mean that she actually is going to list a different age than what she should. So let's go ahead. All right. All right. This is a marriage license. This is her first marriage license, and of course we can't see it there, so let's look it up closer. She married John Powers, who lives in Ogden. Mabel Powers is her middle name, not Marie, my mistake. And she's being listed as living in Butte, Montana, which is or may not be the truth. But we also have a year of when she was married. It's not mentioned right here on this little snip, but so we now know that in 1908 she married, and that would make her 20 years old, being born in 1888. Let's look at something else. All right, here is another certificate of death. This is her daughter, her oldest born daughter, and she also died in California, as we could see, and her birth was December 10th, 1910. And this is important because she was the firstborn, and so being married in 1908, her birth is 1910, and it matches pretty well, doesn't it? However, we also found, before we look at this, we also found a birth certificate and a death certificate for Patricia / Mabel, and her husband John Powers, who died the month before the birth date that was recorded for Marguerite. So we have another mystery that hasn't been solved yet. Again, these are all official documents found in a courthouse, and so we're going to keep on going. Let's take a look at this. Is 1910 when Marguerite was born, and so again, according to age, the usual age, the traditional age, she's 22. Here is her second marriage. marriage register. She was married in Blaine County, Idaho. And you can see right here that that they're in Haley, Junius Erickson, Mabel Claire Powers, still going by that name, not Patricia yet. That was the name she gave herself later when she came of mature age. And so here we have this marriage book that's kept in the courthouse of marriage and how they went. So here we have that here she's stating that she now lives, that she is from Sharon, Montana, and she's 24 years old. And so this is 1913, kind of covered up by my face there. So 1913, she should have been 25 years old, but she lists herself as 24, which could be good depending on her birth date juxtaposed to the marriage date. However, there is a pattern that will soon begin. Okay, here's another certificate of marriage. This is her third marriage, and this is, I've covered up the date. Here is Mabel Erickson. So she is going by her second husband's name. She's Kateri. That she tells us again. She's born in Butte. She says she's 27 years old, and she used to love Hawaii. I remember talking to her when I was a young girl. She worked with a makeup line. And yes, in fact, this is my great-grandmother, and she was quite the character. So for me to research her and her made-up names and made-up birth dates and years was probably more interesting to me than maybe it would have been to her daughters, who had to go through quite a bit more. But she was quite the character. So here she's 27 years old. And she married again in 1932. She would actually have been 44, but here she lists she's 27 years old. So these are all of the different ages that she used. Obviously, the older she got, I was told that she was a beautiful woman, and men were constantly looking at her when she went out. She wouldn't let her daughters tell anyone that they were her daughters, and but she was their sister. So she must have looked young for a long, long time. All right, now this is not quite the courthouse document, but I'm going to go ahead and throw this in. Here she is applying for Social Security. We know that happened in the mid-30s. Mabel Erickson Lejeune, so she's got her second husband's name as her middle name, and she has Lejeune as her third. She divorced all her husbands, but the interesting part about this here is that she now has changed her birth date. She is now 31 because she was born March 20th, 1905. So let's take a look where that gets us. She is now actually 48 years old, and she is claiming she is 31. Of course, this is an official government document. It's not necessarily in a courthouse, but it does give you a chance to see how it was working. This is also a lesson as we do research. Sometimes we only use one or two documents, and we are unaware that there may be more documents that may actually contradict what we believe. And so by getting as many documents as we know how to get, and sometimes they're not expensive, sometimes they are, but as many as we are able to get, and as many people share their documents online, as many as we can get is the best thing that we can do. We can always work out why there's differences, but if we don't know there's differences, we don't know to work it out or to find out which one is the truth or if there are many truths. It just depends. So here we are back to the certificate of death, and we can see that her date of death was November 30th, 1874, and in fact she is 86 years old according to her daughter. So that was my great-grandmother, Mabel Erickson, who decided she would be named Patricia. So now she's 86 and 86 because she started here, and of course that was the death certificate, and the 1888 is on the death certificate, 1974 is on the death certificate, so a reliable source is involved, so we can feel pretty good about these dates being accurate. So So let's go ahead and talk about some of these documents that we can find in a courthouse. We're talking about a brick and mortar courthouse right now, but there are also things that can show up in other courthouses, and we'll talk about those in just a few minutes. Property records, deeds, plat books, and plat maps, powers of attorney, and mortgage books. Anything that's in a courthouse with names and dates are things that can be pertinent to who we're researching. Property records with deeds, plat books, we did that, wills, probate court minutes, and guardianships. There's an amazing amount of genealogical information in this grouping. Then we have civil court and criminal court records. Those also can be hard to find. They're not always kept in the older cases are not always kept in the courthouses any longer, but we just put on our sleuth cap and we can find out one way or another where some of these might have gone, if in fact they've still been retained. Road records, tax records, coroner's records, and naturalizations. I actually just saw my first coroner's records a couple of years ago, and it was the whole process and the information. It was a little traumatic, but it was also fascinating from a genealogist's point of view. It's well worth asking if those records are in fact available to you. We've talked about birth, marriages, and deaths, cradle to grave kind of things that we know that we can get there, and miscellaneous records. I gave another presentation here for RootsTech Connect 2021. And we were talking about the GPS, the genealogical GPS, and miscellaneous records is a grouping fairly unknown in most courthouses. They do seem to have a lot of really interesting things that should have been filed other places, but you may find them filed under miscellaneous records. That might be in a file. More often it's in kind of a book. They've made copies of them and put them in there. They're not the originals, but if you have family from a particular county, it's definitely worth contacting the county clerk to see if they have miscellaneous records just for looking through. They're usually not, there's no index. It's a look by look, and I've seen as many as 25 books of miscellaneous records and none. So none to 25. So it's worth looking. Define, and we're going to talk about courthouses off and online. So here we have brick and mortar courthouses. It's just what we're used to thinking of with courthouses. But many courthouses also have annexes, or they have other places where they store the records, or they've given the records to a historical society. Or there are also stories where they just dump things out on the lawn and concerned citizens tried to pick some of those up. Just finding out and getting to know people and starting conversations in a county, or sometimes these things aren't said in an email, but email is a good place to start. I usually email the county librarian, the one at the largest library, if there's more than one, and ask her some messages, because even if she doesn't know, she or he often will contact someone and get me in touch with them, and I found a lot of information that way. So right here you can see that we have the traditional definition of a courthouse. It's a building where courts of law and county offices are housed, and it's also the county seat. Yes, we understand that. But, however, today we might suggest that a courthouse is also a repository for documents that would normally be stored and accessed from an official courthouse. So a repository for documents could be at all different kinds of places, depending on what year we're looking at. I have found amazing finds by finding out where various states store their older documents. And many of them will build other repositories. They're not courthouses, but they are repositories where older courthouse information, death certificates, birth certificates, marriage certificates might actually be stored. Right? So where do we go to look for digital courthouse records? Sometimes they're still hard copy. Not every certificate it's been scanned and is available this way. So I'm going to list some of the ones that are favorite for me. I have an email address at the end of this presentation. I'd love to hear from any of you to tell me what's your favorite place to go for courthouse documents. This document, I just went blank. Just went blank. I'm so sorry. It's on the tip of my tongue. Of course, we all know full 3, FamilySearch, American Ancestors, FamilySearch Digital Library, which a lot of people are not aware of, but if you don't have an address for it, go ahead and Google, because that's the place where you can go to look at all the family history books and reference books that they keep on the 3rd floor in the Family History Library in Salt Lake City. So most of these books, it's my understanding, have been digitized now and are just available to look through and find. Of course, Google has their own books with all the information, but Google also is a genealogist's best friend. So we want to think about Google whenever we're thinking about something or wondering about something or looking at something. So what format are courthouse records located now? Well, the media type, they can be book, they can be microfilmed, they can be microform, digital. Storage of these records, especially as I mentioned, the older ones, can be on-site or off-site. The most horrifying experience I had as a genealogist was when I discovered that this particular county stored their extra older records in a storage shed. That one took me a little while to get my fake smile off my face, because I was grateful that she was willing to go look for it, but I was sad that records and documents were in a storage shed. Digitized and online, they might be indexed, and that's even better. You have to consider the access, public privacy laws, locally imposed regulations, state to state, county to county. Just know that the clerks are powerful people, and some are very kind and love to serve, and some are very busy and maybe brusque, and some are not kind at all. So it is definitely a little bit of a kingdom when you go to research, and be prepared to be patient. All right, so now that we know a little bit more about the kind of records we can find in the courthouse, let's make sure we go to the right courthouse. This is something I'm going to show you just as an FYI. This is for an example. Here's a formation of Indiana's counties. This is what the state of Indiana looks like in 1820. This is pointing to a man who bought property right here, and this is Randolph County. It was formed in 1818. This long. He's right here. So let's take a look at what happens. All right, now in 1830, only 10 years later, we have that ADM is Adams' new purchase in 1830. So for the man that's living here, it was Randolph. 10 years later, it's not. It's something else. And in 1840, this is what the state looked like. There were still some changes yet to come, but he's in Wells County, which was formed in 1837. So sometimes we think our family's moving all around when we're trying to find them in the census, but they may very well be in the same place. So we may be confused as to why they're living in Wells County, but the family cemetery is actually over here in Randolph. I doubt it would be that far away, but it's just a good example. So knowing where people were, looking at what the county history of the area that we're in, the formation of the counties and where they came from, where they blocked off from, can be very helpful when making sure that we're looking for the right county information when we go to do the county, when we do the research there. Now, these maps are available on the mapofus.org. It does every state in the union, so you can, wherever your family may be from in the United States, if you have family before all the counties were formed, you may find this of interest and be very helpful, especially when applying your census information and other information from your timeline that's done in that way. This is a wonderful book to get. The censuses tell us, and you can see that it's not complete. It ended at 1920. But again, for those of you who are doing research of older families, finding out where they are, and he overlays the county boundaries depending on the year of the census. William Thorndale and William Dollarhide have done a magnificent job. This is a classic. Every home should have it, unless you're just loving online kind of things. But the book does serve a purpose. So today, We saw some examples. We saw a story about Patricia, Mabel, Claire, Powers, Erickson, Lejeune, and her creative ages. We looked at listed various courthouse documents. We defined and discussed what courthouses are, often online, and we also learned a little bit about preparing to search a particular courthouse location, whether it's off or online again. So I'm Patty Gillespie again, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be here. I own Family Lines and Stories. If you have something you'd like to ask me or talk to me about, here's my email. And again, thank you and enjoy RootsTech Connect 2021. Thank you. Goodbye.